Thank you very much. This is going to be a PowerPoint presentation of the artwork by Masood Hussain and my haiku. The book, or the project, Walk with Gandhi, started off as a photo haiku project. That is to say, I responded with haiku, three-line verse, to historical photographs of Mahatma Gandhi. Then we had the much better idea of asking Masood Hussain to make illustrations, to create illustrations based loosely on some of those historical photographs. And this is the result. So I'm going to sit down now with you and enjoy some of the illustrations and haiku that we're going to view, and then a short questions and answers session. Not that we have all the answers, but we might have a few of them. So here is the beginning of the project that was using photographs. I'll read the Irish language version and then the English translation. Ní chluiseann ar grí níos móe, Túr na Gandhi. Our hearts can no longer hear it. Gandhi's spinning wheel. An chullan yma, ach ní hagan éin aharú ar a bhíreanna. The body wastes away, but truth is imperishable. And now we have the beginning of Masood's illustrations. Fananish cén imprach tata bornyuv no yma. Let's see what empire is on the rise today, what empire wanes. Forsi on the rig, ní harine ní achan tyn chainte. Invading forces, always the same, only the accents change. Ligan the skáil sciach, siúlan tas a raig, goding of all her. Your shadow rests, but you walk on, determined. Catja as a train, quail dier gestach sanige on a tain. Chucked out of the train into the dark night of the soul. Now this one is not in the book, but it's just a gesture to Goins here. An concanishi shane sherud bean an. Is it konkani? Ancient sweet warbling of birds. Tus truskig Irene gilk nanean nis glory. The fast begins. Louder and louder the chirping of birds. Einlen is shehe, adultre hinne, do Venus dargan spera. Birds of peace catch fire, skies redden and darken. Tagan endless stray, is echten en het smuinte lenne host. Stray birds come and listen to his thoughts, his silence. That's actually an allusion to a book by Rabindranath Tagore called Stray Birds, a book that I translated into Irish, and it was, of course, Tagore who gave Gandhi the name Mahatma. Ní le téine tí Dúan alla leis a garacid. Not alone, a spider too, imprisoned. Sacharacid, the queen of Arapoga, putly by, in prison remembering her kisses, putly by. Gach éan ára na gohénig, Sirsha, birds of the air, each in its own voice sings it, freedom. Bada tnú le the law viad gach groinin luch for Salin, how they longed for your hand, each precious grain of salt. Slúite a gírig splécha gáilart and féidir anna miskint. Crowds gather for a glimpse of you. Who can see the soul? Tar a firart, gach corasit, cat and ye galoon. Your every move is watched. A cat stalks a sparrow. Gordine in Amritsar, Diora fulla on a blahana. A garden in Amritsar, flowers weep blood. As we speak, elections are happening in the UK, an island somewhat to the east of Ireland, and Jeremy Corbyn, the leader of the Labour Party, has said that if he's elected to number 10 Downing Street, that he'll make an apology for Amritsar. Good idea. India, be your son na fírine, na Saoirse, gach ní on. India, stand for truth, for freedom, the highest things in life. Is fuiri iad na gach prísún in our cahachu, roily, roy downing, colder than all the prisons you've been thrown into, Downing Street railings. Now, Irish freedom fighter and later statesman Eamon de Valera, when he was fundraising for Irish causes in the United States, he addressed Friends of Freedom for India in the year 1920. And here's a short, moving extract from his long speech. Is there any man or woman here tonight or anywhere in the wide world who really believes that it is in order to benefit the people of India that Britain insists on holding India against the Indian people's will? Do you think it is because the British really think they can govern the people of India better than the people of India can govern themselves? Do you think they keep on in India because they want to improve the conditions of the Indians morally or materially? The imperial motive is greed. Gorha sluchor, ketaun chinocher, kriech cries and jubilation. Who is there to remember? Partition. Love, nos love be'ele, and tes shachanta. A hand like any other hand, the untouchables. Will dohan hati iawn the gach dine an ishoria taelsa. Are there hats enough to go round the wretched of the earth? Pleascan siad fós na horcharúd Bapuji. Pleascan siad fós. They still ring out those 3 shots, Bapuji. They still ring out. And down beleerget a geganish droegt kjovronach. The world you saw is fading now, foggy dew. Cadiad na tuaplis sheet adiantaco, einir chrev. What errors have they made in life? Birds on a branch. Bapu lorg de chusher wood na wood. The questions now or comments, Masood and myself would be happy to hear from you. Don't be shy. Maz.
Yes.
Explored Irish history, particularly perhaps Northern Ireland, seen any resonances there with Kashmir? And did that then reflect on your collaborative work here?
Well, it's really very interesting. I met Mr. Gabriel yesterday for the first time. And I think it's Gandhi who helped us doing this work. And well, whatever we did was on social media. And traveling from Kashmir to New York to Dublin, and Dublin to Kashmir. And so this is the outcome of that book. And unfortunately, we are deprived of all these facilities. For the past 4 months, we don't have any access to internet. So, so he used to write haiku, and I illustrated them. That's all.
Question from the back. If we can hear you, or is there a mic for him?
Good afternoon, sirs. I just wanted to compliment you on the excellent presentation. I think that the paintings, the illustrations, as well as the poetry was very well presented and put forward to us. I myself tend to write poems occasionally. So my question to you, sir, is how do you manage to conjure up imagery and express so much in just a few words?
How is all this done, is it? By magic. Haiku is a particular form of art. Perhaps because it has been influenced by Zen Buddhism, or whatever reason you might like to come up with. It's an art form that is, at its best, infused with compassion for its subject, whether this is natural phenomena from season to season. It is naturally infused with compassion. That is the first thing we we have to say about haiku. When the haiku form is mastered, what happens also is another phenomenon which we don't find in other literary forms to the same extent, and it's called interpenetration. And what that means that if you take a subject, as we did here, the life and times of Gandhi, there is something about the haiku form that allows for interpenetration, for complete identification with the subject. Yeah? Complete identification with the subject does not mean hero worship. It means getting inside what you're writing about. Now, the great grandmaster of Japanese haiku, Masood Hussain, he says to his disciples, go to the pine. That means go out of yourself into what is happening in the pine, and the breezes in the pine, and so on and so forth. So, whatever the subject, in this case Gandhi, it means going out of myself into the life and times of Mahatma Gandhi with compassion, insight, and what's called interpenetration. And that means that one actually can, if one is very receptive, one can get something of the grace from the pine and something of the grace from such a unique figure as Mahatma Gandhi. My wife, Ethna, and my daughter, Ava, spent a few days just chilling out before we came to Panjim to this conference. And one morning at this resort, I heard this tremendous crash, and it was a coconut falling down on the sand. And I asked the head waiter, I said, is this a common occurrence? Is it likely that a coconut is going to fall on my head? And he assured me, he said, oh, no, no, no. And I said, how do you know? Well, he said, the coconut knows that you're human. So if a coconut knows that you're human, we should know we're human too. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Take a mic, Maz.
So since I write some poetry myself, I'm curious about Irish poetry, even though I don't know the language, but in terms of the orality of it, the sound of it, I'm curious, how do you work with the haiku form there? Do you still work with syllables as in English? Is it that 5-7-5 line? And could you maybe in that, when you respond, say a little bit about the Irish language itself and its cadences? And because I believe there's, at least even in Irish English, there's quite a few diphthongs and those long vowels that work almost in this wave-like manner. So how do you work around that? Because when you're reading the English, I could notice that there, I think because you're also trying to translate, so you've not maintained that the perfect haiku formal demand. Do you do so more in Irish, or how do you? I mean, I don't think anyone here knows the language apart from.
Well, the 5-7-5 syllabic configuration of a haiku in Japanese, you can count them now on your fingers if you like. Furuike yakawazuto bikomu mizunoto. That's 5-7-5, sometimes called one-breath poetry. But that is not practiced at all outside of Japan. It's much more likely to be around 12 syllables in all. The reason for that is that the different nature of the languages, we shouldn't really be talking about syllables at all, but syllabates. So if the English word onion, 2 syllables, if that were a Japanese word, there'd be almost 4 syllables in it. Everything is pronounced. It would be oh, ni, oh, not onion, oh, ni, oh. So because of the different nature of the languages, We don't follow the classical syllabic count. I see a relationship between using the Irish language and practicing a verse form such as haiku, because we also, one of our most ancient forms of utterance, we'll call it, not poetry, in Irish is called a triad, and it is 3 parts. So for instance, we say that there are 3 things that can't be taught. Gu, fele, vielleicht. Here are 3 things that can't be taught: a singing voice, generosity, poetry. So even in our ancient Irish language utterances, we have this, a triad. We have this 3, as in the 3 lines of haiku, Also, the Irish language is the oldest literature, the oldest poetry in Europe, after Latin and Greek. And the earliest forms of nature poetry in Irish are called marginalia. In other words, the monks were transcribing the Gospels in Latin. And then, after hours and hours and hours of transcribing these precious manuscripts on vellum, the hand would get weary, and they'd look out from the scriptorium, and they might see a little bird, or they might hear one, and they'd write little short nature lyric poems on the side of their manuscripts. So this is the earliest form of Irish poetry. It's brief, it's nature-centered, and it gives us an aesthetic and spiritual link to the haiku tradition, even though we're thousands of miles apart. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, okay.
Really want to thank you. And the form, the haiku form, I felt its power in my heart. It brought me to tears, thinking of Gandhiji immediately. And thank you for explaining the power of the haiku. And I'm wondering if it was also partly your recitation. So I would love to suggest, if you recorded, to hear as you see, and then just put it online. It's a very, very beautiful. It just brings Gandhiji alive for us. Thank you so much.
A sign appeared at the bottom of the room saying that our time is up, so it's time to go maybe eat something or buy a few books. Thank you.